Welcome to the People Chronicles. I'm Jackie Hoffman, and today we are joined by Rosemarie Sullivan. And Rosemarie, you are here to tell us a little bit about your story, but what everyone would like to know is what they can learn from it today.
Well, I think the main lesson to learn is that there's a lot more to life than what we know. There are no coincidences. They're just God incidences. And if we slow down, take a deep breath, and pay attention, we can see them. And they can really impact our lives.
And this is a personal story from 1997. So this is
Yes.
going back a few years, quite a few years, but this is something that has impacted you so much that it has stuck by you. And now you can tell us a little bit about, and I think you should be writing a book because you've got a great title to this story and a lesson learned. So tell us what it is.
I would love to write a book, so if anybody knows and can help me, I'd appreciate that. Well, the story began in 1997, and I actually have done speeches on this story. It's really called Lessons from a Deathbed. And a good friend of mine passed away in December of that year. I used to babysit her children, and she was sick with ovarian cancer. And I heard she got really, really bad, and she wanted to see certain individuals. And long story short, I was one of those that she wanted to see, because she wanted me to do something for her upon her death. And that was to play I play and sing at St. Joe's Church in Reading. I play the guitar. So she wanted me to be in charge of her funeral arrangements at the church. So she wanted to have this meeting with me, so I went to her house. And there's where the first two lessons took place. So she told me everything she wanted for her service and the reasons why. And then after that, she basically launched into this lecture, sort of like a lecture from a deathbed, where she was actually in my face, pointing at me, saying, "You're just like me. You don't pay attention. God's there. You don't see him. You need to slow down. Those are not coincidences. Those are God incidences."
Why do you think she chose you?
Well, she knows I'm a personable person. And I don't know, I think she thought that I would spread that message. And it's something I have done. I must have told this story at least 100 times. When there's different people who come to me and say, I don't feel good, I'm going through this, I'm going through that, I'll say, pray to the Holy Spirit, which is lesson number 2. And I know everybody has different faiths and they probably believe in a higher power. But Cheryl was a devout Catholic, so she did believe in the Holy Spirit. And, it was soon after her death, a friend of mine from high school was dying of a rare disease called scleroderma. Went to the hospital to see him with my twin sister. And when I went up to say hi to him, my sister grabs me and says, "Tell him about Cheryl." Well, here he was on his deathbed, and didn't look like he was going to make it. And I just said to him, a friend of ours died named Cheryl Soppy, which he knew. And I said, one of the things she told me was to pray to the Holy Spirit for anything you want. And I told him, so when I leave here, I'm going to pray to the Holy Spirit that either a miracle occurs or that God takes you to him. Well, 2 hours later, his mother, who was sitting there, called my mother and said that he had just passed. And she wanted to thank me for giving him those words that, pray to God either to take me or for a miracle. So the first 2 lessons I learned on my first visit there was Cheryl. And then my third lesson I learned, it was approximately a week later, because she wanted to have a meeting with all those that were going to sing at her funeral and the other gentleman who was going to play the guitar with me. And to me, this was the most scariest lesson. And maybe she did it that way so that we could actually see what you need to do in order to rebuke Satan. So the third lesson was to rebuke Satan. And I know some people might not believe in Satan, but I also read a very good book this year. It's called You Are Greater Than You Know. And really, it's your ego, the negative stuff inside of you. But anyhow, this third lesson, we were sitting at her deathbed, sitting with her, talking with her. She thanked us all for coming. She wanted to start this meeting. And her daughter was sitting approximately where you are, holding her granddaughter, who was a year and a half, I was sitting here facing her, and she was laying here. And she thanked everybody for coming. And then she said, we can get started. And with that, her granddaughter, Megan, started just screaming, crying. And it was like, couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And it was like blood-curdling screams. And Megan's mother, Carrie, looks at me, and I looked at her, and I'm like, what's the matter? What's the matter? And she's trying to comfort her, and she couldn't get her calm. And I looked at Cheryl, and next thing, Cheryl says, he's here. And I'm like, who is here? And she said it again, he's here. And with that, her eyes rolled up in her head. And then she said, Satan. Well, we all went crazy. We didn't verbally go crazy, but my hair felt like it was standing up. I think I lost all the color in my face. I looked at everybody else. They looked scared to death. And so I'm looking at Cheryl, I'm like, what do we do? What do we do? And she says, just like in the Bible, you need to rebuke Satan. So on the count of 3, we said, go to hell, Satan, leave this child. And immediately this little girl turns at me, smiles, like nothing was wrong. And Carrie put her down on the floor. She went off in the corner and played like nothing was wrong. And then Cheryl says, we can start now. And I said, no, we can't. You need to tell us what the hell just happened. Right. And she said, well, it's just like in the Bible. Satan is tempting you all the time, every day. And it's up to you. You have a choice to rebuke him. So I think one of my other lessons is we have a choice every day of what we do. You know, when things happen, what do we do about it? So when there's negative thoughts coming in my head, whether it's my ego or if I choose to call it Satan, I can just release it. And I have a choice whether to go with the negativity or to remain positive. It's very hard in life, but when you slow yourself down, pay attention, you'll see those God incidences, and you can rebuke Satan. And I've prayed the Holy Spirit for many times for miracles to occur for people, or just to help me with life. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That's a great story. I mean, there are 3 different things that you have going on there, 3 different lessons learned. And you take those gifts, we'll call them gifts, and lessons at the same time, and you kind of put those gifts and lessons into other people's ordinary, average days and try and help them out with whatever it is that they might be going through. So I want to ask you, Rosemarie, and you probably already answered this question, but do you believe in coincidences, or it's just meant to be that way? Or do you think that there's another path that should be traveled and people don't know enough about it? So we're going to find that out from you when we come back on the People Chronicles. Sit tight. This is where things get really deep, and we'll find out some real answers and hopefully help some of you out during the People Chronicles today.